Hey everybody, Nick here from another BookTube channel, and today I'll be reacting to 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books. I'm on Goodreads, which I don't use regularly at all. I use it strictly as just a way to track my reading, but I don't follow user reviews on there. I don't even have a reading goal set for this year. I made a video about that if you're interested. But I figure this is going to be the place to get some good material, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to kick it off with Fahrenheit 451, one of my favorite books of all time. Unpopular opinion time. Everyone seems to love this, but for me, it is possibly the most overrated book of all time. If this book had a face, I would punch it. The message of the book: you shouldn't burn books. And books are a huge part of our and society's identity. Yes, that message is beautiful. So you also shouldn't write like an elementary school kid, copy a lot from 1984, and write way too long and boring books. Okay. Write like an elementary school kid is one of the most bizarre criticisms that I've ever seen of Ray Bradbury, one of the greatest writers of all time. Copy a lot from 1984, I guess just because it's dystopian, and once one person wrote one dystopian book, that was it. We weren't allowed to write any more, even though the societies are vastly different, and the only comparison I would make between the two is that they are some kind of dystopian in which media is controlled a bit. But the way they go about it is very different. So not sure about copying a lot from 1984. And write way too long and boring words. Way too long? How long is it? It's not even that long. What's the page count on this? Page count according to the Kindle edition on Goodreads is 194 pages. That's less than 200... If you think that's a long book, I'm sorry, but you have a very, very low attention span. Well, that was painful. The longest 187 pages I've ever read confirms my dislike of dystopian sci-fi and arty 1950s novels. On the plus side, I've read this classic and can now give my opinion about it, and my opinion is, ugh. That's fine if that's fine if that's your opinion. I mean, if you don't like dystopian sci-fi, then that's okay. I completely I accept this one because taste is something, you know. There is no accounting for taste. I could not read this. It would have taken serious effort for me to finish it, and I did not. Well, I'm glad you recognized your limitations and stopped. The way you can tell this was written by a man is he writes a teenage girl who walks alone at night and voluntarily begins a conversation with a male stranger. I mean, okay. Yeah, you're sad, but right. 1 star, though, for that? Come on. Alright, let's move on to The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. 2 childlike women go into hysterics over every little thing that goes bump in the night, while their inept, paternal, doddering male companions try to protect them. Repeat this scene several dozen times and fill in the spaces in between with dated, corny, insipid dialogue about the nature of ghosts, and you have The Haunting of Hill House in a nutshell. This is a tale more about women as helpless, fragile, emotional beings than supernatural suspense. It is presented through the lens of sexist mid-20th century stereotypes that assert that lower-class women are drudges and upper-class women can do little more than flail and faint. From a suspense thriller point of view, this is a story that goes nowhere but in circles, where nothing interesting happens and no climax is reached. I hated every word of it. Well, I hated every word of your review. I would review your review as man tries way too hard to sound feminist, completely misses point of great book. Didn't like this at all. The characters are childish. There's nothing scary about this book, and it's just rubbish. They talk rubbish the whole way through. We get it. Mrs. Dudley clears the plates away at 10 a.m. Wow, rubbish. They talk rubbish the whole way through. I mean, literally, the way the characters talk to each other is the best part of the book. Like, the interactions of Eleanor, who is trying to fit in with this crowd who is obviously from a different pedigree from her, and her being, having low self-esteem and being self-conscious, but still trying to make that effort and bridge that gap. Like, there's so much humor in that. It's wonderful. No, it's rubbish. They talk rubbish the whole way through. Okay, this one's wild. What a huge disappointment. I did not expect the plot to be that slow and so boring. The cover fooled me. I expected the plot to be similar to the Netflix series The Haunting of Hill House 2018. I guess they got the one with the Netflix cover that they released when that show came out. And after the first few pages, I was sure that the novel is completely different and that the story was somehow similar to the old classic movie The Haunting 1999. I watched the movie many years ago, and it was at the time a legendary movie. And I do not deny that it was one of my favorite films of all time. So I said, it is okay if the plot is completely different from the series. Let's see the full story behind the old classic movie. But that movie is awful. There is an actual classic The Haunting movie from the 60s. That's great. But the 1999 movie is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Also, this person doesn't understand how adaptations work. Like, they thought that they were getting a novelization of the Netflix show and not just the original novel? I'm sorry, but this is not a failing of the book. This is a failing of you. Okay, let's move on to A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, one of my favorite modern horror novels. 1 star for nailing the blogger voice, though I want to rescind that star for using spaghetti sauce as a recurrent motif. Yes, spaghetti sauce. You got a problem with Italians? And another deduction for trying to ape maybe the greatest horror story ever written, The Yellow Wallpaper. And another deduction for telling this as both a reminiscing frame narrative gag and possibly the least convincing 8-year-old narrator in history. Well, yeah, she's 8 years old, so she's unreliable. That's the deal. That's the bit. That's what makes it good. The premise was promising, but overall this was just messy. It was fantastic, but okay. The most interesting thing about this book is the title, Nuff Said. Don't you dare bring Stan Lee into this with your Nuff Said. That's not enough said. No, that is not Nuff Said. Explain to me why you don't like it. The most interesting about the title. Did I accidentally buy a YA book? I don't get it. Horrible. If I could give this 0 stars, I would. I've come to the realization after reading 3 of Tremblay's books, Devil's Rock, Cabin at the End of the World, and this one, that he is the Brian Griffin of writing. If you don't catch that analogy, it's a running Family Guy joke that Brian the dog is a hack writer who pumps out the worst kind of contrived BS and pats himself on the back about his literary excellence. So you're a big Family Guy fan, huh? Your opinion means a lot to me. DNF 55%. The book is so bad, I'm not going to waste the time writing a complete review. Well, I'm glad, because you didn't finish the book. Reading this book was like trying to carry a conversation with my phone after saying, "Okay, Google," very robotic and unnatural. What? Overhyped, or at least it was to me. Gotta stop taking recommendations from coworkers, because I'm 0 for 3 at this point. Bet your coworkers love you. Mary was okay as a protagonist, but the dialogue was unrealistic, and overall it was pretty obvious we were heading full steam towards "it was mental illness all along, you ignorant hicks." Well, actually, no. Did you not get? It's ambiguous. It's ambiguous. Oh my god. The book is not thrilling. It is not scary. It is bad Exorcist fan fiction. I am not sure if anyone was ever really possessed, but at no point did I care. Yeah, you're not sure that... I don't think... Some people just don't like ambiguity, I think. People like to just be told what's happening exactly, and they don't like to have to, you know, just like try to figure it out on their own, you know? And I think that's a common theme here with these reviews. Alright, let's do something a little bit more recent, and it's a book that I feel like is impossible to hate. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Let's see what we got. Since people are reviewing this hack's latest hackery, I will do the same. Since all 3 million words he has written thus far have been terrible, I will assume that will be the same case with this thing. And that review was written in July of 2022, which is amazing. I mean, this guy is so good at reading that he read this book like 6 months before it ever was available to anybody. See, this is why I can't bother with Goodreads, because this person did not read the book, and he doesn't like Brandon Sanderson, and so he just threw this out there. So there, boom, 1 star. 1 star, everybody. That counts. That counts as a review. This is why you can't trust these websites. Utter trash. It's unfortunately not working for me. The world was okay, but I couldn't stand most of the humor or the style this story was written in. This is the first Sanderson book I've ever hated. Okay, I totally understand if the voice of this book didn't work for you, if you typically like Brandon Sanderson's existing works, because this is a very different style that he's writing in, and I go into that deeply in my review, but basically, this is not narrated by Sanderson just like as a omniscient God voice. It's narrated by Hoyd, who is a much more jokey character. He's got a different way of telling stories. So if that doesn't work for you, then that's completely fine. I think you're being a little harsh saying that it's utter trash. I think it's better to say just it doesn't work for me. Sorry that you hated this one, but what can you do? 1 star, not for me. All right. Okay, and surprisingly, I mean, the responses are overwhelmingly positive for Tress. Let me see if there's any good 2 stars. 2 stars. It was cute, I guess. 2 stars. A collection of attempted quips. That's good. Alright, I'm just gonna stop with those 4. This was kind of an experiment video for me. I'm not great with like off-the-cuff stuff like this. Let me know if you thought this was worth it, if you enjoyed it. Maybe I could do stuff like this again in the future. But thank you for spending some time with me today. Now, it's time to get back to leaving 1-star reviews.